Snow White and the Seven Trolls. In a dark, faraway forest lived a queen. She was the most beautiful queen in the land. But when she looked into her mirror, it didn't show her perfect face or shiny crown. It showed how she looked on the inside. Wicked. Mirror, mirror on the wall, said the queen, who is the most beautiful of them all? A ghostly face appeared in the mirror. It is Snow White, laughed the face. The queen went into rage. Who is this Snow White? She screamed. The mirror showed a beautiful girl playing in the forest. Her hair was as black as night. Her skin was as white as snow. The wicked queen began to keep an eye on Snow White. She hid behind trees and watched her pick flowers in the forest. She sent the birds to follow her as Snow White fetched water at the river. With each year, Snow White grew more and more beautiful. So on her 18th birthday, the queen sent Snow White a present. It was a red and juicy apple wrapped in gold paper. But the queen had put a terrible curse on it. When Snow White bit into the apple, she fell into a deep sleep. The queen screeched with joy. She will sleep forever unless kissed by a worthy prince. Only that kiss will break the curse. Nearby, 7 mean and ugly trolls heard the queen's screeches. Their names were Smelly, Stinky, Icky, Yucky, Slimy, Gooey, and Pickles. They ran to find the sleeping Snow White. But they weren't there to rescue Snow White. You see, trolls are all so sneaky. The trolls took Snow White to their little cave in the forest. They placed her on a bed of grass. Then the trolls sent word throughout the land that they needed a prince to break the curse. If the prince brought Snow White the perfect gift, she would become his queen, the most beautiful queen in all the land. But Smelly, Stinky, Icky, Yucky, Slimy, and Gooey had no plan to tell a prince how to break the curse. Their plan was to take the riches each prince would bring and keep it all for themselves. You see, trolls are also very greedy. But Pickles was not like the other trolls. He was smaller and made to do all the work, especially the cooking. He cooked all day and night, and when he wasn't cooking, he was cleaning and shining his pots and pans. Pickles felt sad for Snow White. Each night, Pickles would place a single red rose in Snow White's hand. He would look at the moon and wish that one day a worthy prince would arrive. One by one, prince after prince came to see Snow White. They marveled at her beauty. Each brought a present better than the prince before. The riches piled higher and higher. The trolls laughed and snorted with glee each time a prince left with no luck breaking the curse. Finally, one day, a prince from the poorest country in the land showed up. "I have nothing to give Snow White but my love," he said. Pickles knew this prince was the one. But smelly, stinky, icky, yucky, slimy, and gooey screamed at the prince to leave. "Without gold or silver or other riches, you will not be able to break the curse." The poor prince hung his head as he shuffled back to his horse to return home. Pickles snuck up behind him and whispered, "Please, dear sir, give Snow White a kiss goodbye." The prince leaned down and gave Snow White a soft kiss. "Oh dear," she said as she woke up and saw his old worn clothes. "I so hoped I would get kissed by a rich prince, but I will be your queen if I can take Pickles with us." The prince agreed. Pickles quickly gathered his pots and pans, and even though the prince had no riches, the three lived happily ever after. Of course, that's because Pickles had hidden all the gold and silver inside his pots and pans. Smelly, stinky, icky, yucky, slimy, and gooey were left with nothing and no one to cook their meals. The Princess and the Poison Pea. Once upon a spooky time, a king and queen ruled a small kingdom. Their castle stood at the edge of the dark forest. The king and queen had only one son. "It is time for you to marry," said the king to his son. "We must find you a real princess," said the queen. All the king's knights jumped on their horses. They raced through the kingdom and beyond. "The prince is looking for his princess," they shouted. Soon, girls from lands far and wide arrived at the castle. "Pick me, pick me," they shouted. "Not so fast," said the king. "You must prove that you are a real princess," warned the queen. Chills ran down the girls' spines. Many dashed away. The queen took the girls that remained to special rooms in the castle. Each room had a princess-sized bed. On each bed was a stack of 10 large mattresses. Underneath the 10 large mattresses, the queen placed a tiny pea. But these were no ordinary peas. These peas were poison. "If you are not a real princess," the queen whispered to herself, "you will die by morning." The queen tucked in all the girls and turned out the lights. "Pleasant dreams," she cackled. The next morning, a pile of bones lay on each bed. "I knew these girls weren't real princesses," laughed the queen. Week after week, girl after girl came to the castle, and every morning the king and queen were greeted with another pile of bones. The prince didn't care. He only wanted the most beautiful and real princess in the land to be his bride. "Silly girls," he said, "you can't trick us." One cold and stormy night, the prince heard a knock on the castle door. "Who would come here this late?" he asked. Slowly, he opened the large, creaky door. There stood a skinny girl dressed in rags. Her clothes were soaked. Her hair dripped and drooped around her face. "Who are you?" sneered the prince. "I am the only real princess in the land," said the girl. "My kingdom was stolen from my family years ago. Now I live in a hut in the dark forest." The queen swooped in to see the girl. "She is fake," she scowled. "Send her to bed. At least we'll only have a small bag of bones to collect in the morning." The prince took the girl to a room and locked the door. But the girl was clever. She spotted the pea under the mattresses and carefully slipped it into her bag. Then she crawled into bed and fell asleep. Everyone was shocked to see the girl alive the next morning. "How can this be?" asked the king. "She can't be a real princess," snickered the queen. "I won't marry her," cried the prince. The girl only smiled. "Thank you for the good night's sleep," she said. "Let me make you a breakfast feast." The girl hurried to the kitchen. She grabbed a big pot and tasty ingredients. Then she added something special to the bubbling mixture. "That smells wonderful," said the king. "What is it?" asked the queen. "It's a secret recipe," said the girl. The king and queen grabbed their spoons and slipped it down. "I hope you enjoyed my special pea soup," hissed the girl. And minutes later, the king and queen turned into a pile of bones. "That will teach you to steal my father's kingdom," said the girl. "I promised I would get it back someday." So what happened to the prince? The princess let him stay in the castle, and she gave him a very special job. She made him her royal toilet cleaner, and nothing could be more real. The Missing Princesses. Once, in a faraway land, lived 10 princesses. Each was more beautiful than the last. The 10 princesses slept in 10 beds in the same room of a giant castle. Every night, after they were tucked in, the door was tightly locked by the king. Yet, each morning, the shoes of the princesses were worn and dirty, covered in cobwebs and smelling of freshly dug graves. The king grew confused. "I will offer great riches and a daughter's hand in marriage to anyone who can discover the secret of worn shoes," he said. Many men tried, all failed. One day, a soldier heard of the king's problem, and he traveled to the castle. He passed an old woman in the forest. "Take this special cloak," she said. "When you need to hide, put it on. You will become invisible. And don't eat anything the princesses give you, for it will contain a sleeping potion." That night, knowing the soldier was there to discover their secret, the oldest princess offered the soldier something to eat, but he secretly tossed it away. Then the soldier began snoring loudly, as if he was fast asleep. Believing he was sleeping, the 10 princesses dressed in their finest gowns. Then they crept through a trapdoor in the castle floor. The soldier put on the special cloak and followed the princesses. Tip, tip, toe, tip, toe, tip. The princesses walked into the forest and passed 3 large groves of trees. The first had trees with silver leaves. The second had trees with golden leaves. And the third had trees with leaves of shiny diamonds. The soldier snapped a branch from each type of tree and hid them under his cloak. Finally, the princesses arrived at a small lake. Their 10 ghostly princes with 10 small boats awaited them. The princes rowed the princesses to a castle on a hill. The soldier waited below. At the castle, the princesses danced all night until the sun poked its head above the horizon. Tra-la-la, la-loo, tra-la-la, la-lee. Their shoes were worn and dirty. "Hurry," said the oldest princesses. "We must get home before the soldier or our father wakes." The soldier buttoned up his cloak and followed them. That morning, the king called the soldier to come before him. "Tell me my daughter's secret," he said, "or you will die like the other man who failed." The soldier removed the 3 tree branches from under his cloak and told the king what he had seen. The princesses gasped and fell back in surprise. "For solving the secret," said the king, "you may marry one of my daughters." The soldier chose the most beautiful daughter. On their wedding day, the princess took the soldier into the forest. They walked past groves of trees covered in leaves of silver, gold, and diamonds. Then they began to dance. But as they did, the princess turned from a beautiful girl into a skeleton. She giggled and twirled as the soldier desperately tried to free himself. It was no use. The soldier would never leave the forest. There he remains as another ghostly prince in the castle on the hill, waiting to dance the night away. Goldilocks and the Three Ghosts. Once upon a time, there lived a nosy little girl. Her hair was golden yellow, so everyone called her Goldilocks, even though her real name was Pam. One day, Goldilocks walked into the forest. She came to a large run-down house. "Don't go in," whispered the wind. But Goldilocks was too nosy to listen. She marched to the front door, pushed it open, and stomped inside. But you see, dear reader, the house was filled with spiders and dancing skeletons, and in the attic lived a family of ghosts. Goldilocks looked around. "Oh, this is mine now," she said. "Oh my!" If only Goldilocks had known that ghosts don't like it when you take their things. If only Goldilocks had cared. So Goldilocks began looking at all her new things. She looked in cabinets, under chairs, behind couches, and on every table. She grabbed what she wanted to keep and tossed the rest. Dancing skeletons clicked and clacked, but Goldilocks was too busy to hear. Finally, she plopped in the middle of her big mess. All her searching had made her hungry. Goldilocks stomped into the kitchen. She found cupboards as empty as a mailbox on Sunday. So she looked for a chair to sit on, a place to feel sorry for herself. Because what good is a house with no food? Goldilocks sat in the biggest chair she found, but it was too hard. Then she sat in the middle-sized chair, but it was too soft. Finally, she sat in the small chair. "This is just right," she said. Goldilocks bounced up and down. Splat! The chair broke into tiny bits, but Goldilocks only laughed. "I am getting sleepy," she yawned. "I need a bed, not a chair. I will find one that is just right." So Goldilocks climbed the stairs. They creaked loudly with each step. A strange scratching noise followed behind her. But Goldilocks was too tired to turn around. Goldilocks trudged to a large bedroom. In it sat 3 beds. Each bed was a different size. Goldilocks plopped on the biggest bed. but it was too hard. Then she plopped on the middle-sized bed, but it was too soft. Finally, she plopped on the small bed. "This is just right," she said, and Goldilocks fell fast asleep. While Goldilocks was snoring, the clock struck midnight. And you know, dear reader, no good little girl should be away from her home at midnight. But Goldilocks was too busy dreaming to care. However, someone else in the house cared. Up in the attic, the family of ghosts began to stir. And the last thing these ghosts liked was someone in their house after midnight. "It is time to haunt the cemetery," said the Papa Ghost. "I hope it's a chilly night," said the Mama Ghost. "I hope there are no puppies," said the Baby Ghost, because that's what baby ghosts fear most. The three ghosts floated out of the attic, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. "Someone has been sitting in my chair," said the Papa Ghost. "Someone has been sitting in my chair," said the Mama Ghost. "Someone broke my chair," cried the Baby Ghost. "I hope it wasn't a puppy." The Papa Ghost looked up. "That someone is now in our bedroom. Let's scare that someone away." The three ghosts floated up the stairs, through the walls, and into the bedroom. They gathered around Goldilocks. "Oh, how fun," said the Baby Ghost. "My first scare tonight." "Ready?" asked the Papa Ghost. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Boo!" they all shouted. Goldilocks sat up, her eyes bugged out, her hair stood on end. Then she let out a deep scream. And Goldilocks was no more. The ghosts had scared her to death. You see, dear reader, that's what happens to nosy little children out after midnight. The Bremen Town Ghosts. Some tales are old, so old that the truth begins to rust. What's the truth in this tale? Only the ghosts can say. Many years ago, an unlikely group of animals became friends. They came from homes where animals were not loved. Donkey's owner kicked him when he was slow, beat him when he was fast, and screamed at him all day. Dog's owners was no kinder. He forced dog to sleep in the mud, and he fed dog only once a week. Cat's owner was almost never home, but when he was, he would push Cat off his chair and force him to sleep on the cold roof. Rooster's owner hated only one thing, the morning crow of a rooster. So every sunrise, he would throw things at Rooster to stop him. One day, each animal had had enough. So when their owners left for the day, each decided to run away. "Hee-haw," said Donkey. "To Bremen Town I will go." "Ruff, ruff," said Dog. "To Bremen Town I will go." "Meow, meow, pooh," said Cat. "To Bremen Town I will go." "Cock-a-doodle," said Rooster. "To Bremen Town I will go." On the road, the animals met. They joined together and sang, "Cock-a-doodle, meow, hee-haw, ruff. Now we can escape from a life too tough." Along their journey, the animal friends spotted a hut on a hilltop. "Maybe this will be a good place to live," said Donkey. As they approached the hut, the animal friends saw a light. A group of robbers were inside, counting their money and feasting on a grand meal. "We are so hungry," cried Rooster. "How can we get some of that food?" asked Donkey. "Let's scare off the robbers," said Cat. "We can pretend to be a ghost," said Dog. So Dog climbed on top of Donkey. Cat climbed on top of Dog, and Rooster hopped on top of them all. They leaned against the window, casting a giant ghostly shadow. Then they began to make loud, haunting noises. "Ooh!" Frightened, the robbers fled the hut, and as they fled, the animals saw who the robbers were. Their mean and evil owners. The animal friends raced in. They munched and crunched on the delicious feast. Soon they fell asleep. From the bottom of the hill, the robbers watched. "We have been tricked by our animals," they said. So they decided to take back the hut. But they weren't the only ones who wanted the animals out. The robbers tiptoed up the hill. They surrounded the hut. Then on the count of 1, 2, 3, they give a fearsome growl. Growl. The animals dashed around the hut for a place to hide. They tried one closet door, then another, and another, but none would open. Something was holding them shut. And as the robbers burst in, a gaggle of ghosts floated into the room. Plop, flop, drop. In an instant, the animals and robbers fell dead from fright. To this day, their ghosts haunt the hut. At night, visitors hear strange noises, screams of terrified animals, moans of trapped robbers. They are the last sounds the visitors ever hear. Dinner of Doom. Once, in a faraway land lived a powerful king. Every day after dinner, he had his servant bring in one last covered dish. But the king would only eat it in secret. One day, the servant became curious. He snuck the covered dish into his room, locked the door, and carefully lifted the lid. Lying on the plate was a delicious-looking white snake. Surely the king won't notice if I have a tiny bite, he said. So the servant cut off a piece and swallowed it whole. At once, the servant heard noises outside his window. 2 birds chattered about a witch they had seen in the forest. She had put a curse on a snake. The curse was both bad and good. The servant was amazed. Eating the white snake had given him the power to understand the animals talking. Was that a good or a bad thing? He wondered. The next day, the king discovered his most precious ring was missing. He suspected his servant. Either return the ring or find out who has it, shouted the king. If you do not, I will have you killed in the morning. The servant ran and hid by the lake outside the castle. There he heard some ducks talking. "Oh, my stomach," cried one of the ducks. "I accidentally swallowed a ring I found under the king's window." The servant grabbed the duck and raced back to the castle. "Serve this duck to the king for dinner," he said to the king's cook. And when the king began to feast on his meal, he found the ring. The king felt sorry for accusing his servant. "What can I do to make this up to you?" he asked. "Let me see the world for 1 year," said the servant. So the king gave the servant a horse and money, then wished him well. On his journey, the servant spotted 3 fish stuck in the river's thick reeds. "Please help us, we will soon die," they cried. Hearing this, the servant ran over and freed the fish. "Thank you," they said. "We will never forget your kindness." The next month, the servant saw 3 baby ravens. They had fallen from their nest. "We cannot yet fly," they cried. "Now we will starve and die." The servant gave the ravens his lunch. Then he carried them back to their nest. "Thank you," they said. "We will never forget your kindness." A year later, after traveling the world and doing many kind things, the servant returned to his great city. A buzz filled the streets. "The king's daughter is looking for a husband," everyone whispered. "This is the first happy news since the queen disappeared." When the servant saw the beautiful princess, he fell in love. said the princess to the servant. You can marry me only if you perform 2 tasks. First, you must find my royal blue ring at the bottom of the river. She secretly hoped the servant would drown. The servant dove into the deep waters. I can't hold my breath long enough, he cried. Just then, 3 fish floated up with the ring. For your kindness, they said. We never forgot. Said the princess when she saw the ring. Now, you must bring me a golden apple from a tree on top of the green mountain. She secretly hoped the servant would fall and die. The servant climbed as high as he could, but he was unable to reach the tree. Just then he saw 3 ravens. They dropped a golden apple into his hand. For your kindness, they said, we never forgot. The servant handed the king the apple and gave the princess a soft kiss. In a blink, she turned into a snake. You ate a bite of my cursed white snake, screamed the king. I too ate it and turned my wife, the queen, into a snake by kissing her. Upon hearing this, the angry princess reared up and bit the king and the servant. Then she slithered away as they both dropped stone cold dead. And as she did, the cackle of a happy witch ran out from deep in the forest. The end. Thank you for listening, boys and girls. This is from Your Story Fairies. Have a good night.